Chapter 14. Mr. Chris Gets a Taste. The day before Mr. Chris came home from the hospital, Marley found the first spring beauty. The sugaring was over, and she and Joe were helping Fritz pull the buckets. That one flower stood all alone in a patch of sun, one bright pink spot on the brown leaves under a maple tree. It seemed to be a sign. Carefully she took it up, bringing with it some leaves and soil, as Mr. Chris had told her to. She wanted to put it in a flower pot to stand beside his bed. Mother and Daddy were waiting when she came home from school on the day. The school bus was late, and of course they had to wait for Joe. Marley thought it would never come, but at last they were on the way, Marley carrying her little flower pot and Mother holding a huge cake on which she had put the words, "Welcome home, Mr. Chris." "Chrissy says there's nothing wrong with his appetite," Mother said. Chrissy came out onto the porch to welcome them, just as she had done that first day. As they all went up the stairs, she said, laughing, "I tell you, I wasn't one bit sure there for a while whether we'd ever see this day." Marley stood in the doorway and let the others go in first. Mr. Chris's voice was his own, big and strong from the bed, with his laugh booming out toward her. But he was a huge island of sheets, and his skin looked strangely white. "Where's my girl?" he asked, and held out his arms. Then she forgot how strange he looked and ran to him. He reached out and took her directly into a hug that didn't smell of Mr. Chris and the earth at all, but of soap and medicine. Yet here he was. But oh, how awful! She had forgotten all about that little pot. Over the sheets was spilled the earth and leaves and the poor little pink spring beauty. "Oh, dear," Mother said, "Marley, you would do a thing like that." "It's the first spring beauty," she said. "I had it in this pot." Mr. Chris sat looking at the brown earth and the tumbled old leaves and picked up the flower by its long, thin stem. "It's beautiful, Marley," he said. "I didn't dream you could find one already. I've been wondering how they were coming along this spring." "There are buds on the hepaticas just starting," she said, "and there'll be yellow violets by Sunday." He looked at Chrissy. She was wiping her eyes for some reason and blowing her nose. "I guess I'm home," Mr. Chris said. "I guess it's all starting over, isn't it?" Then the sheet was taken off and shaken clean and the flower fixed again in its little pot. Everybody talked at once. They were gay with relief in it being together again. Marley stopped being afraid Mr. Chris might break if she touched him or the bed, and sat perched at the foot. "And now that syrup," Mr. Chris finally said. "Fritz says he thinks it's pretty good. How about letting me have a taste of it?" Suddenly everybody was quiet. This was the moment, wasn't it, when they would find out for sure how well or how badly they had done. Mr. Chris knew. It was one of the things a man learned gradually, but after 40 years of springs and runs and carrying buckets and keeping fires, he knew whether the syrup was right or wasn't. Marley looked at Daddy, and Daddy sat looking at the floor, twiddling his thumbs. "I'm afraid it's not like yours, Chris," he said. "Even though we used the thermometer, maybe because we did. See, we didn't want to give your good old customers our syrup and spoil your reputation, so—" Mr. Chris laughed, but nobody else did, even Chrissy. "So," Daddy went on, "we decided we'd keep what we did apart from what you finished before you left. We didn't put any of your labels on our cans." There was a little silence. Then Mr. Chris cleared his throat and said, "Dale, it's bound to be." No, it isn't, Chris," Mother said quickly. "You know how we feel. Why, all Dale's ever heard from me is how absolutely perfect your syrup is. I always got that gallon from you at Christmas, marked First Run, Chris, and signed with your name." He couldn't feel any different about it. "That order came from Florida the other day," Fritz said, "from that fellow who always sends the special crate for 10 First Run gallons. Like Dale said, we could just tell him how it's been this year." A little frown was on Mr. Chris's forehead. "What's the matter with it? Did you burn it or something?" he asked. "Heavens, no," Daddy said. "Why, Chris, we watched it like hawks. Actually, as far as watching goes and getting the sap into the pans as soon as it came in, we did all that." "We sure did," Fritz said. Joe nodded and Mother nodded. Marley thought of the long, cold hours and felt a sudden pain in her arm muscles, as if they remembered, too. "Well, then, let me taste it," said Mr. Chris. "I'm starved for a taste of good syrup after that imitation stuff they served at that hospital. Sort of watered-down mixture they had. Had it on pancakes last Sunday." "Well, then," Daddy looked at Fritz. Fritz started for the door. "Let me get it," Marley cried. "I know where it is." "I'll get it," Joe said. "Marley, it's too heavy for a girl to lug that whole gallon can clear upstairs." "Heavy? 1 gallon heavy? Why, I've carried as much as 4 gallons clear from that big entry to the flatboat, and you know it." Everybody began to laugh. Daddy said, "Well, I guess I'll have to toss up for this one." He took a nickel from his pocket. "Heads or tails, Marley?" She hesitated. She tried to think of some special sign that would be sure to make it sure. Suddenly she thought about the foxes and said quickly, "Tails." Daddy flipped the nickel up and it came down and rolled along the floor. It was heads. Joe went with a whoop toward the door. "Marley, Chris can't taste that syrup out of that gallon tin, can he?" Chrissy asked. "If you'd like to go down to the kitchen and get him a cup and a spoon." Marley came back upstairs after Joe, carrying the cup and spoon carefully while he lugged the heavy can. They all stood around while Daddy unscrewed the little lid and poured some syrup carefully into the cup in Marley's hands. "Now," he said. "Don't spill that on the bed, for goodness sakes," Mother said. Marley moved carefully over the floor, holding the cup with both hands. Mr. Chris reached out and took it from her. They both moved so carefully one would have thought they carried a magic potion like those in the fairy stories, some drink that could make a person grow suddenly tall or suddenly small like Alice in Wonderland. Maybe some magic liquid that would help Mr. Chris not to be sick anymore, but to live forever and forever. He lifted it close to his face and took a big taste, holding it in his mouth a while, tasting. Then he swallowed, slowly, and then he smiled. "Joe," he said, "are you sure you got what these fellows made? Sure you didn't make a mistake and pick up some of that first-run stuff I finished off myself?" "No, sir," Joe said seriously, but everybody else was laughing. "I swear on the Bible I couldn't tell the difference if I tried for 10 years, Mr. Chris said. He looked into the cup deeply as if he gazed into a well. "Color, fragrance, everything," he said. "I guess you must be a mighty good teacher," Daddy said. Then everybody was talking at once again. How many gallons? What a wonderful crop! How perfect the sugaring weather had been for days and weeks. There was an article in a Pittsburgh newspaper that said it was the greatest sugaring year in the whole history of Pennsylvania. "You see, Marley," Mr. Chris said, and pulled her onto the bed beside his pillow. "It's because you came. It must be because you folks came." Out of the window, over his head, she could see the trees, where millions of tiny new buds were beginning. So it would begin over and over, she thought. Always and always, the miracles on Maple Hill. The end. Hope you enjoyed it.